Bentrovati e ben ritrovate, sono Simone Martinelli e oggi, grazie a Rita Giordano, Asia Corradi e Alessandra Lax dell'Osservatorio del Digital Innovation del Politecnico di Milano, vi porto una testimonianza di Eric Ries, l'autore di The Lean Startup e il founder and chairman di Lean Startup Co., azienda di Open Innovation, e The Long Term Stock Exchange, uno stock exchange che permette alle aziende di quotarsi con una strategia molto particolare. Eric e io abbiamo iniziato a collaborare ormai da mesi, a cui introduco startup italiane che hanno già ricevuto un investimento da parte di un fondo di venture capital per cercare di attrarre investimenti da fondi americani e POC da grosse corporate dentro il network di Eric. Ho avuto la fortuna di conoscere Eric, ospitarlo in Toscana e organizzare con lui un evento a Lucca, un evento a Roma, dove abbiamo parlato con più di 100 founders che hanno avuto la fortuna di poter chiedere soluzioni ad Eric dei loro appunto problemi del momento. A Eric è piaciuto molto la visione che ho dell'Italia, che viene da un'esperienza ultra decennale nell'ecosistema startup di vari paesi. Ho infatti coperto ruoli da stagista a product, a growth, a regional manager di startup Series A americane e inglesi, prima di rientrare in Italia, dove ho fallito la mia startup e adesso invece ne gestisco una di cui sono molto contento. Sono anche incubator manager all'interno di SP Business School a Torino e ricopro una carica di advisory board member all'interno dell'associazione Innova, oltre che tenere delle classi all'Università di Torino, sempre sul tema startup. La mia visione dell'Italia credo che sia molto condivisibile e si basa sulla maturità del nostro ecosistema, che mostra un piccolo numero di unicorni che ancora hanno difficoltà a generare profitto, un numero non elevato di fondi di venture capital molto giovani, di cui forse solo uno riesce a portare return of investment ai propri LP in maniera strutturata e costante, e soprattutto il tema su cui appunto mi concentro è la qualità dei nostri e delle nostre founder, ancora alle prime armi. Scarseggiano infatti in Italia i e le second and third time founder, veri motori di un ecosistema che cresce e che ho visto in altri paesi, in altre geografie. Per questo Eric ha sposato la mia causa, apriremo a breve una non-profit association che si concentrerà a sviluppare l'educazione e la cultura dei founders, inserendo in Italia un numero di librerie gratuite di libri startup, chiamate Eric Ries Libraries, e una serie di software sempre gratuiti per aiutare founder a trovare co-founder e per aiutare founder a condividere posti letto, perché tantissimi e tantissime early stage founders hanno difficoltà a viaggiare in Italia per incontrare investors, clients e partecipare ad eventi, hackathons o attività interessanti. Riesco a visionare tutte queste necessità grazie alla community iFounders che ho creato 2 anni fa, dove sono presenti 2500 founders e 3500 members, e da dove riesco a comprendere i veri bisogni di early stage founders, soprattutto chi non è ancora inserito all'interno dell'ecosistema e chi è in bootstrap, che spesso non sa a chi rivolgersi e prende decisioni sbagliate e si affida agli attori e le persone non adatte a loro. Vorrei quindi incitare tutti a entrare in contatto con me qualora volessero parlare di questi progetti per sviluppare l'ecosistema startup italiano dal basso, concentrarsi sulla qualità dei founders e la nuova generazione founders in Italia. Ringrazio nuovamente Rita Giordano, Asia Corradi e Alessandra Lax dell'Osservatorio Digital Innovation. Auguro a tutti una buona conferenza e lascio appunto all'intervista insieme ad Eric Ries. Ciao.
Hello, hello.
Eric, thank you so much for being here. We are recording an interview for the Polytechnique University of Milano, the Politecnico di Milano. It's one of the most prestigious university in Italy. The Observatory of Digital Innovation of Politecnico di Milano is presenting a research, actually multiple research, the 2nd of December, and hopefully this video will be presented during the conference. I'd like to thank Rita Giordano for allowing us to present this video and her fantastic team. The research will be about corporate innovation, corporate venture capital, open innovation, and investment in general in Italy, with a little section also on the founders' profile, which is called, identity kit, and as well as the mental health of founders. Well, in 2 3 minutes we will not be able to cover everything, but the observatory has noticed that mostly in Italy, that's where they study the market. The corporate venture capital activities has changed, being a little bit more focused on return on investment and specific kind of goals instead of like going out and see what's up, if I may say it like that. I was wondering if this is something that you can recognize as a global trend. I'm sure you've seen a lot of it with Lean Startup, Co, and other activities that you're running across the ocean. So
Yes, of
that would
course.
be
Well, thank you. And yeah, thank you for including me in this program. So what's interesting about this question is I've been at this a very long time. So I've been at it long enough to see this is not just a trend, but a cycle. So corporate venture capital oscillates over time between ROI focused investing, seeking to generate a return in some kind of time frame, and more speculative type investing. And the reason this is an oscillation is because neither perspective is really well aligned with the true startup market. Because most of us who have been trained in financial analysis are trained to analyze a business based on discounted future cash flows. So we look at its tangible assets, its customers, its employees, its intellectual property, its commercial relationships, its biz dev, its contracts. There's things to analyze, and then we try to extrapolate those things forward into the future. But if you look at the history of venture capital, not just corporate venture capital, but all venture capital, there have been plenty of wins. Plenty of money has been made that way, but it is in a very narrow slice of the startup ecosystem. It's either in late stage investing where there is enough data to extrapolate from, or occasionally in relatively low risk investment categories where the size of the market can be well estimated. But the vast majority of the breakout startups, if you look at the venture capital portfolios overall, certainly in the top investors, the returns are dominated by a small number of extreme outliers who don't just return, a 5%, 10%, 100% return, but produce such a return that one company pays for the entire venture fund and more, and gives it a remarkable return. We're talking about returns of 10,000% or more. And those companies cannot, in general, be analyzed through an ROI framework. They have to be analyzed through a probability framework. And this is what confounds almost all investors who are trained in traditional financial analysis. Because if you had walked into the early days of Facebook or Google or any of the world dominating companies that today seem so obvious that they would be a winner, at the time you had to make the decision to make the investment, there were no tangible assets to analyze. There was no return on investment. There was no market, no customers, no business. There's nothing. The only thing you can analyze is what is the size of the total opportunity and what is the probability that the startup will achieve that outcome. And the problem now is, just to give one more thing about that,
sure.
that the heart of the challenge, because someone who's listening to this right now, who's trained in ROI-based analysis, will say, that's okay. I'll make my first estimate of the probability, and then I'll wait and I'll watch carefully to see when there is enough tangible evidence that the probability has shifted. Then I'll make my investment at that time. And if you study these companies, you will notice that every investor who had that as their strategy did not get the opportunity to invest at all, because the problem is the probability, the early evidence, what we call the minimum viable product in lean startup. The early activities of the startup have the double effect of revealing both evidence about the size of the market and evidence about the probability at the same time. So what happens is the valuation jumps precipitously from round to round, way in excess of what the ROI-based analysis would present. So the problem is, if you want to get those big winners, you have to learn how to make valuation bets in the absence of evidence that are probability-based. So generally speaking, corporate venture capital tries that for a little while, gets burned, decides they lost a lot of money at that, and decides to go back to the ROI-based investing for a while. And then over time, as they miss out on one after another of the major wins that other people are chasing, they tend to go chase after it, and we tend to oscillate. Of course, the better solution is to learn to master the in-between model, but that's very hard. for corporate venture capital in particular.
And so that's exactly like perfect that you're calling with this topic because you're closing with this topic because one of the point of the research was that one of the largest and biggest struggles for corporate to work with startups is actually working with startups. So integrating with the culture, being able
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
work with the founder, with the ego, maybe of the founder, with the procedures they have inside, the governance. So, I mean, this is probably like an old time struggle. It's not something that is new to us. But from the research that the Osservatori Digital Innovation that they produce, most of the corporate, the biggest problem they have is working with startups. So, I mean, it's like $1 billion question. Is like, how do we tackle this? And if there is no solution, like, what's the best approach to tackle this?
You know, it's funny. Startup investing would be wonderful if it wasn't for the startups. You know, that's the worst part of it. Yeah, exactly. If it was easy, then the returns wouldn't be there. The reason why venture capital returns such extraordinary amounts is simply because of difficulty. If everybody could do it, the returns would be competed away. So what's funny about it, I will tell you, in corporate innovation settings, this is considered to be an intractable problem. But I don't think so. I think it's a very easy problem to solve. And in fact, I will tell you the solution is so simple, I can tell it to you just in a few minutes here. And I can assure you that everyone who hears this solution will immediately decide that they're not going to do it. Okay? That's why it's hard.
Wonderful. Let's
Everyone,
go.
everyone said before I tell them what the solution is, everyone tells me, great, I can't wait to do it. I've even had people swear to me, whatever you tell me, we're going to do it no matter what. I tell them, and then instantly they change their mind and say, no, we can't do that. Give me another solution. Okay? Here's the problem. You have to think of it like agriculture. Imagine I had an arid, rocky soil, volcanic ash and, dry desert conditions. And you say, I have a beautiful citrus tree. I have an olive tree, a beautiful olive tree, and I want to plant it in the soil. And you tell me, what kind of tree should I get? Should I get a big tree or a little tree? Should I get an expensive tree or a less expensive tree? Should I do this? You only want to talk to me about the tree. And I say, well, listen, with all respect, whatever tree you plant, a hardy tree or a weak tree, a big tree or a small tree, if you plant it in this arid soil, it's going to die. So if you want to plant the tree, you talk to any gardener in the world. If you say, I have bad soil, but I want to plant a tree, this is not hard. Gardener will say, well, first we have to remediate the soil. We'll improve the soil. We'll bring in fertilizer. We'll water the soil. The focus should be on the soil, not on the tree. Once you have good soil, you can plant any tree.
Well, I think I
So
understand what you mean by the soil
the
at this
soil
point.
is the culture of the corporate setting that is meant to startup to integrate into. From a corporate perspective, startups seem very frustrating. The founder has a lot of ego. They have all this ambition. They don't play by the rules. They deviate from the plan. They change their mind. They blah, 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 blah. True, it's all true. But that's what innovation requires. So if you want to have innovation thrive in a corporate setting, you have to learn to accommodate those behaviors. And now the good news is it's not a personality thing. People often assume I'm saying, oh, I have to get renegades and people who break the rules, perhaps borderline criminals. No, no, no. You don't need the behaviors are not caused by the startup. The behaviors that you don't like are caused by the clash, the incompatibility of the plant to the soil. Fix the soil, you fix the behavior too. Because so if we as a corporation, if we can master what I call innovation accounting, well, what's called metered funding, if we can master the intrapreneurship, that is cultivating entrepreneurial activities, we get a double benefit. Not only can we buy a startup or invest in a startup and have a fruitful collaboration, we even can start our own startups internally. We don't even have to go outside because for bigger companies, you already have a lot of entrepreneurs working there already. So by learning to master what I call entrepreneurial management, a different discipline to general management, but a parallel discipline, a compatible discipline, we learn both, then we can do this much more effectively.
We've seen this trend actually, like a lot of companies bringing open innovation within their own teams instead of externalizing. This is not a
Yeah, why
topic
not?
that we might cover. But Eric, what you said is true. I mean, we need to work on the soil. We need to get the corporate to, but all of these corporate they have like processes that have been structured as of this because of standardized process with security, with data protection,
Yes, yes,
things
yes,
like that.
yes, yes.
So they need how I mean. like I know it's a super difficult question, otherwise everybody will have a solution for it. But before I ask you the approach, an approach is to work on the soil. But I don't know if there is a case that comes to your mind that
Sure, sure.
happened, or maybe something else like that can be a little bit more practical. Like if there is a corporate here in this room today in Politecnico di Milano, listening to this video, like what can they do tomorrow, or who should they look at to copycat and try to get more
Sure, sure,
successful?
sure. I'll tell you a story that I did with an American multinational company, very big public company. I asked me to bring in, work with their teams to work on the soil, just what we're talking about. And we were doing workshops all day, workshops to multiple days. I went on forever. One team after another, I'm working with them to work on their plan. And every team, if I come in with the plan, we have to spend all this money and take forever to do anything. I say, why? Well, we have this requirement and this, we have to go to legal review, we have to do the tech security review, we have to do this review, that review, this review, that review. Da, da, da. I said, okay, but how many of those reviews are suitable, like they're appropriate for the product you're trying to make? And at the beginning, even the team was saying, we have to do them. We have to. I said, okay, tell me the plan. Well, our plan is to take this product and work on it for 2 years and then send it to millions of people. Oh, sure. Yeah, you're going to send a product to millions of people. You need a lot of reviews. Sure. I said, but why do we have to send it to millions of people? What if we send it to 100 people to start? And we spent all day working on, is it possible to build a minimum viable product to do the experiment? The team finally realized they could do it. And I'll spare you the details, but we figured out how we could send it only to 100 people at the most. His product cost $39.95, $40. Okay. And at the end of the day, they said, this is all good, but we still have to have a legal review. So we can't do it. Never mind. I said, what do you mean, never mind? Oh, they'll never say yes. It's impossible. And I said, well, who's they? What do you mean they will never say yes? They're like the legal department. Well, whose decision is it? And I'm sitting there, well, I guess, it's decided by the general counsel of the company, of our division. And I said, great. Does he work at the company? Yeah. Is he in the phone directory? Uh-huh. Is there a phone right here on this desk? Uh-huh. Can we call him? And they looked at me like I was thinking you should call a dragon. Like it was like an outrageous idea. He'll strike you down in anger. I said, listen, just do me a favor. We're going to get him on the phone. They get on the phone with the GC and they say, excuse me, sir, do you mind if we run this unlicensed experiment? It will cause unlimited liability to the company. And he's like screaming at them, why, I dare, no, of course. And I'm like, sorry, can I interrupt? They forgot to mention that we're going to send this product to only 100 customers. He's like, well, how much does the product cost? $40. He's like, you're telling me the total worst case liability to the company is $4,000? There's like, yeah. So you have wasted more than that amount of money with wasting my time on this stupid phone call. Goodbye. He slams down the phone and everyone's like this. I said, and then one of the people was like, wait a second. Did he just say yes? I think he said yes. And everyone's like, did he say yeah? Yeah. He said yes. They had permission. All of a sudden, a 2-year, $20 million project is going to get done in a week because he said, oh, what do I care? Anyway, I tell you this story. It's a funny story, of course,
Yeah,
but
they had two aha moments
yeah,
basically.
two aha moments. But the critical lesson of this story is I went to meet the GC afterwards. And he said, it's funny you called me because my boss, the general manager of my division, is always angry at me that I'm getting in the way of all his projects. Could you help me develop new legal guidelines so that my teams could go faster? And that's when the real work began. We changed the legal structure of the approvals required to do projects to encourage teams to do an MVP. Again, we don't have time to get into all the details, but it was a night and day change. And it changed from legal as an obstacle to innovation and therefore a component of the bad soil to legal as a fertilizer that accelerated the growth of the seeds that they planted.
Well, it's funny. It's funny again. You're closer to this because like one of the part of the research was management buy-in, like how much management is involved and how much the decision of doing innovation in corporate venture capital comes from the management. Now, Eric, we don't have much time. We want to leave the floor to all the speakers that are going to be present today. So just like on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe it's a silly question, but how important is to have the management buy-in in these kind of processes?
Well, of course, it's a 10 out of 10
10
for
out of 10, of course.
yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
But the question then is, well, how do you get them to buy in? And I will say one thing that is I've learned from experience. Managers listen with their ear, but they also listen with their wallet. So a lot of times when people seek buy-in from a manager, they tell them what they want them to do, but they don't change the incentives. So I tell the manager I want you to embrace innovation, but I punish them if they have any failure on their watch. Now, if you tell me to embrace innovation, but you financially punish me for failure, I don't take the lesson that you want innovation. I take the lesson that you want hypocrisy. You want me to pretend to embrace innovation while actually killing it so that you don't have your hands dirty. Most managers will do what they are told. And so, yes, if that's what you want, yes, sir, okay, I will be a total hypocrite and I will lie to your face and tell you what you want to hear while I do the opposite. And executives get so angry that managers do this. But it is the executive who creates the conditions that teaches this is what they want to have. If you want a different behavior, you must change the incentive, not just use your words.
Well, I can agree more. I'm sure people in the room as well. Just hopefully, we wish them a good luck to implement this kind of hard processes and going forward in the innovation path. And
Well,
obviously,
thank you for having
towards
me.
thank you so much, Eric, and we hope maybe to have you in Italy again, maybe here in Politecnico. Why not?
I
I'll
look
thank
forward to it.
again.
I look forward to it.
Amazing. I'll thank again
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Alessandra
Ciao.
Lux, Rita Giordano, and Asia Corradi for having us, and I'll see you. Thank you so much. Ciao, Eric. Thank you so much.
Ciao. Take care.